Hey guys, my name's Kevin with Piece of Pie Math, and I'm here today to bring you another edition of our videos. And we'll be doing a topic from Algebra 1 today called variables and expressions. And so, what I always preach in my videos is math builds on itself. So, every class you take is basically a building block for the next class or next topic. And we're going to start at the very beginning in Algebra 1 to build that base up for you to be able to get to the next levels of math. And so today's topic is called variables and expressions. It is one of the building blocks of math. So it'll help you better understand like the higher topics and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and get started. So again, channel is piece of pie math. And my name is Kevin Petta. And I get it. It's early January. You're just coming back from Christmas break, and you're like, man, school. Gosh, that's the last thing I want to be doing, and especially math. I know a lot of people out there they just don't like math, and myself included. When I was your age and going through middle school and high school, I didn't like math either. And when I got past all of the just elementary kind of thinking, 5 plus 5 equals 10, 1 plus 1 equals 2, and what is X, I really started to see, the beauty in mathematics. And I always like to say that math is the spirit of everything. So I know, math is the last thing you want to be doing right now. And what I hope to bring to you is kind of like a level of understanding from how I interpret it and see it. I myself am a data scientist. I've been doing it for 13 years, and I use all of this stuff every day. So again, why should you listen to me? Well, I was right in your shoes when I was your age, and I didn't like math either, but I grew to like it and appreciate it, and saw that how useful it is. And, everything that is being done with AI, artificial intelligence nowadays, this is what goes into it. And, if you ever strive to be at that level where you're, creating and doing artificial intelligence, you have to start with this. You have to do this stuff. It's mandatory. And so, if you stick with me through this journey, I'll help get you to where at least I am, and hopefully better than what I do. So again, today we're going to be doing algebra 1, variables and expressions. And you'll have to kind of forgive me as we go through this. I just got all of this YouTube recording equipment for Christmas, so I'm still getting used to writing on the writing pad and all that stuff. And, maybe my handwriting isn't as legible right now, but just, stick with me through it, and it'll get better. So like I said, math is, each class is kind of like a building block, for the next class. And the more of these building blocks you can get to, the higher level understanding you'll have. And also what a lot of math is also vocabulary. You have to learn how to speak the language of math to communicate to other people, so you can explain, what's going on, or you can understand what they're saying and what's going on when they're saying it. So a lot of these lessons is going to be vocabulary, and I'll just be explaining, what this term is and what does it mean mathematically, so you can kind of speak the mathematical language. So that's what a lot of this lesson is vocabulary, and then we'll bridge that gap to what it is mathematically, so you can use these building blocks to get to the higher level stuff. So first, what we're going to start defining is these terms in algebra. The first one we're going to go over is what's called algebraic expressions. Next, we're going to go over what's called a variable. This is one of the most common terms that I talk about or you'll hear in the world of math. Next is term and factor. And what's also interesting about these is there's kind of like an order or hierarchy of what I'm talking about with these things. And we'll kind of discuss, how what that hierarchy is. Then product, power, exponent, and base. All right, so number one, algebraic expressions. So basically, this is a way of representing a mathematical situation using numbers like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and something called variables that we'll learn about here in a second, like I said. But basically, an algebraic expression is a mathematical sentence, and you'll often hear it called formula, equation, function, and that kind of thing. So, also, I want you to know that a lot of times in math, there's many ways to say the same thing, and this is one of those instances. So, it's often defined as algebraic expressions, but there's many words for what people mean when they say algebraic expressions. Like I said, it can mean what's called function, formula, or equation. But for right now, we'll talk about it as an algebraic expression, and I'll work those other terms in so you can kind of hear all of this interchangeably. So basically, again, it's a mathematical situation using numbers such as numbers, and then mathematical operations such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So right now, well, that's kind of like the basic definition of this. And as you go through math and get to these like higher level math classes and other topics, such as geometry, trigonometry, statistics, the definition of the algebraic expression will change and become bigger. There's more mathematical operations than just something like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. But for this sake, algebra one's sake, we're just going to start off with this. And hopefully, if you stick through me with these videos, you'll learn more of like what I'm talking about now. And so we also use something called variables in our algebraic expression, function, equation, formula. But we'll learn more about like what a variable is here in a little bit. Again, so just starting off with this algebraic expressions, and then next we got just got to bear with me. Writing pad's always fun. Okay. That took way too long. Okay, so number two. All right. So we have a variable. And variable is basically a symbol used to represent an unknown quantity. So symbol used to represent an unknown quantity or number. a lot of the time, it's the thing that you're using to solve for. The thing that you're trying to find. And what I mean by symbol used to represent an unknown quantity, your symbols can you've probably seen this before, but basically be X, Y. You typically see N, I, J. So all of these letters represent some number or quantity that's unknown that we're either solving for or using to solve for the thing that we're interested in. And then aside from like letters, again, it can just be a symbol, but you also see Greek letters used a lot, like alpha, beta, sigma, and so on and so forth. So again, a variable is just that symbol used to represent the unknown quantity or number that you are solving for or using to solve for what you're trying to find. All right, number three. Term. So a term is any part of an algebraic expression, which could just be the number or the variable or the combination of the number or the variable that's in that algebraic expression or that formula. So let's give a few examples. Hopefully we can get the writing pad to cooperate. Oh man, it almost worked. So, all right. So term is, oh, epic fail. Let's see if we can stop this. All right. So a term is any part of, and we'll just say algebraic expression in AE. So I don't have to keep writing it out all the time. So any part of an algebraic expression, such as the numbers used, the symbol used for the variable, or a combo of both the number and the variable used in the algebraic expression. And so just some examples of that. We can have a formula, or some part of a formula that's just 3x. So the 3 can be a term, the x can be a term, or 3x can be the term. And what's important here is that you kind of have to, when you're talking to somebody about these things or thinking about these things, you have to understand the context in which you're talking, to understand, which term is it in the algebraic expression that they're talking about. And so the more that you follow along and learn these vocabulary, this vocabulary, the better that you can understand the context and know, oh, they're talking about the 3, the in the algebraic expression, and not the x, or not the 3x. But you can also have things like, 5y plus 3, where again, the 5 can be a term, the y is a term, 3 is a term, 5y is a term, and so on and so forth. Or you can have 1 over n, or more famously, n times p. So yes, so now you can kind of see like the hierarchy of things. You have an algebraic expression, which is a formula, function, or equation, and within these algebraic expressions are numbers and variables. And variables are the unknown quantity or number that you are using to solve for or trying to solve for. And part of that algebraic expression is you have these terms, and the terms are each part or are parts of that algebraic expression. All right, number 4. And once you get past a lot of this just vocabulary, material, it gets better, and you can start using the math behind this, and understanding like where you can apply this to like real life situations and how it's used. So 4 is factor. And again, so this is more in like the terms of multiplication in that scenario. So factors are the quantities being multiplied together. Simple. Factors: 5 times 3. 5 is a factor, 3 is a factor. X times y. X is a factor, y is a factor. Those things are being multiplied together. And that's, again, you have to understand that, that's the context that we're talking about, multiplication. And some examples of this are, and I guess before that, before I do the examples, let's talk about more in depth, multiplication. So there's this idea of what's called a product. And the product is the result of the factors being multiplied together. Now, some examples of that, and well, yes. So, first of all, some examples of that are, just your straight x times y. And in this example here, x times y, you'll see that to represent the multiplication, I used this dot operator. And there's multiple ways to represent multiplication, and sometimes there's multiple ways to represent, almost all of these mathematical operations. And that's another thing that you just have to pick up and learn, what are all these different ways to represent these things, so you can understand, what somebody is attempting to do or talking about. So again, we're talking about products and multiplication, and the different ways to write that multiplication. So here we have x times y, and I use that dot operator. You can now also have x times y, where I use that cross product operator. Or you can just write the two things next to each other, x times y. That is, when I look at that, I think, oh, okay, it's multiplication. You can also use parentheses to separate these terms, again, these terms or factors in the multiplication. And similarly, you can write it that way. These are both the same thing. You will always get the same answer no matter how you do any of these operations or what symbol you use to do this operation. You always get the same thing. Or you can write it like x times y. So again, forgive me if I missed one or two, but I think, that's more the point of what I'm getting at, is that, so, number one, this is what these things are called when you're talking about multiplication. You're talking about the product, and, the result of what's within the product, call these factors. And then, there's different ways to write out a multiplication problem. So let's put this into like real life, so you can have 5 times 3, which equals 15. You can have 5 times 3, which equals 15. You can have 5. And actually, so I will say that you don't really see this written as much, like when I'm talking about this example, because, it's hard to really interpret what is that. But when you have like a variable like x or y, and then the number here, then you often see it like that. But if you do, and somehow they're talking about multiplication, then yeah, it's 5 times 3. But moving on, you have 5 times 3 equals 15, or 5 times 3, which equals 15, or 5 times 3, which equals 15. So, here again, we're talking about multiplication. This is the product of the numbers. And these here, 5 and 3, are the factors. And you can also call them terms. But for right now, that's what we're talking about. All right, so moving on. So last definition. All right, so now we're going to talk about something called, exponents, and we'll get into the vocabulary of exponents. So the first is what's called a power. Basically, a power exponent is, an algebraic expression which has a certain form, x to the n, or x to the power of n. So this is, a power, and also what's called an exponent, x to the n. So here, x is called the base, and n is called the exponent. So, and other different ways to say this is x raised to the power of n, or x raised to the nth power, or x to the n. So, here again, this is different ways that you can say the same thing. And mathematically, the way that this works out is you have x to the n, or x to the power of n, is basically equal to n is the number of times that you multiply x together to get that quantity. So what that basically looks like, and depending on how big n is, so if n is 2, then it's, so let's look at this again. So if n is 2, it's x to the 2. If n is 3, it's x to the 3. And this, that's also called x squared or x cubed. Or if n is 4, x to the 4. And you can also have fractional n, so you can write it as x to the 1/2, and that's definitely for a later, later class. But here, so what it works out to be algebraically is x to the n is equal to, depending on how many n's there are, it's x1 times x2 times x3 times x to the n. So depending on how many n's you have, that's how many times you write out the multiplication of x to get the answer that you're looking for. All right, and so that's basically it for what I want to talk about for variables and expressions today. And what I'm trying to do is make shorter videos, so each topic that I talk about is like a little bit more digestible, and you don't get bored sitting here for hours along the way trying to learn something. And that's something that I see that a lot of math YouTube channels do, is they pack everything into 1, 2, 3, 4 hour video, where it's hard to find what exactly you're looking for, or actually sit through all of that. So this is what I want to get to today for Algebra 1. Variables and algebraic expressions is basically just this vocabulary. And for the next class, what we're going to do is implement and use that vocabulary to solve math problems. And we're going to talk a lot about how you can use normal words in communication and turn that into what's called a mathematical sentence, and do it the other way. So basically take a mathematical sentence and write it out and communicate it into like normal, ordinary, everyday English. So stick around for the next class. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe the channel. I'm going to be doing this for every class that's out there: Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, Trigonometry, all the calculuses, linear algebra, and then work our way up to data science, statistics, machine learning, and also SQL, which is what I'm really, really passionate about. And again, so thanks for sticking with me, and hope you got a lot out of it, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.